always great catching up with my next guest, Cory Sandhagen, who's got a big fight coming up here. Umar Nurmagomedov, main event, UFC Nashville, August 5th. Cory, how's it going, man?
Hey, James, I'm good. How are you?
Doing awesome. Big fight here against Umar. I just want to go all the way back to when you first heard about Umar as an opponent, because I think initially, and we had talked about this in our last interview, it seemed like they were trying to do Merab and Umar. And how did he get into the equation with you?
So Merab, I guess, was getting a surgery, or is getting a surgery, or got a surgery, one of them. But yeah, it was Umar was going to fight Merab for like a #1 contender fight, and then Merab wasn't able to do that. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, Umar was just going to jump over me like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the UFC was like, well, will you fight Umar? And I was like, yeah, of course. If it's going to be for, an up there fight where it could potentially be for a #1 contender fight, then like, absolutely. That's why I'm here, is to fight the best guys and to fight for a world championship and see if I'm the best in the world. And so, yeah, it was more like they were going to give a #1 contender fight to him anyway. So now that Merab's getting a surgery, better it be for me.
And I imagine you weren't surprised then, because like you said, the rumors were Umar and Merab. So you figured like, okay, well, I can get some of that, shine as well if Umar needs someone to fight, right?
Yeah, they asked me to fight him actually pretty quickly after my last one, but it was like way too soon. They needed to just like fill a main card, but it was way too soon. And then I told them, yeah, I could fight in August. And then, yep, they just did the matchup, and now we're fighting in August.
And do you know when that fight was going to take place, the original one, like when they were targeting you to fight him? You said it was shortly after your fight. Do you remember like when it was supposed to take place?
I forget in specific, but it was like, I think they asked me like pretty quickly after the fight with Chito. And I was like, dude, like I'm icing my leg right now.
Right.
Like it's not.
Oh, so was that soon? Because I know we did an interview about 3 months ago, so it probably would have been right around then, right?
Potentially. I kind of lose time.
So do I. It's old age for me, for sure, is why I'm forgetting stuff. And just the other thing that got announced this week, which I think was a bit of a surprise, Henry Cejudo fighting Chito Vera. What was your reaction to that with you just defeating Chito?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I guess Henry really wants to fight someone, and but also a tough fight for Chito. Honestly, Chito's not the best wrestler in the world, and yeah, that's a tough one for Chito. He does have like a lot of range on Cejudo, which I think will matter, but yeah, that's a tough one for Chito, I think.
And I'm assuming they put that on the card as well in case there's something that happens in the main event. And then that way, if someone happens, like, well, obviously not Chito, but I think if, something happens with Aljo or O'Malley, I could see maybe Henry stepping in. Do you see that as a scenario?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they would pull. I don't know. It's kind of hard to tell with. I mean, because if they do that, then they're kind of like screwing over Chito pretty bad. But
yeah.
So I always wonder like how much they weigh that factor into it. But yeah, I mean, the UFC, I guess, does things pretty smartly like that. So yeah, potentially, maybe.
Since they made that fight with Chito, kind of looking back now, kind of if you had your choice, would you have rather fought Henry just because he's a former champion and he had a close fight with Aljo, or are you fine fighting Umar? Like, to preface this also by saying, you've said this many times, you'll fight the toughest fighter in the division. It doesn't matter, but I was just curious as a personal preference, would you have rather fought Henry than Umar just because he's a former champion?
I don't it like messes me up too much if I decide to have opinions about things. So
okay.
I literally don't even let myself have opinions about anything.
Yeah, because you're fighting Umar, it doesn't matter. Yeah, okay, that definitely makes sense. And then just the last thing on that fight as well, Cejudo mentioned as well that there was a possible injury. He had a thing on his YouTube channel talking about how, he's dealing with something. And, I know the UFC announced the fight, but do you think there's a possibility it might not happen just because, again, Cejudo's kind of unsure of this injury?
Oh, why would you say yes to a fight if you're not going to do it?
Yeah. Well, they announce fights sometimes without the fighter, like with Sterling and O'Malley, for example. They announced the fight and they hadn't signed the contract yet, and I know they've done that before. So I'm wondering if that was the case, maybe.
Potentially. I don't really know. I think everyone's always dealing with something, to be honest.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Big or small. And then just, and I'm assuming you're picking Cejudo in that fight if they were to fight. Just, I mean, you've been in there with Chito, so you have a good sense, right?
I think, yeah, I mean, it's, Yeah, I would definitely. I think I would choose Cejudo in that one, but I'm always wrong. It's crazy how wrong I am about picking
I
fights.
don't know, man. You've had some good ones for sure. And you know, I love the video, by the way, the other day. You kind of came out on Instagram and said, like, look, I'm going to fight anyone. I want to fight the toughest people. What prompted that? Was it the fan response to the fight? Like, what prompted you to make that video on Instagram?
Yeah, a piece of that was because, you know, I think I don't know who cares less about the rankings, I or the UFC. You
Mhm.
know, like I don't think the rankings really matter. So when you get like a bunch of stuff about how why would you fight this far down in the rankings, you know, and it's like the rankings really don't mean. Like I said, Umar was going to fight Marab for number one contender spot. You
Yeah.
know, it would be number one guy against the number 11 guy. So yeah, to me, the rankings don't really matter that much. I think that Umar is a very, very good fighter, and those are the guys that I'm interested in fighting. I think he's about as good of a grappler as anyone else that I was going to fight in my next one, which would have been Marab or Cejudo. I think he's about as good of a grappler as those guys, and he has better striking. So I think he poses even like a more challenge than a lot of those top guys, even though he hasn't been around as long. I know me personally, I was like top 10 skill level long before I was in the top 10.
Yeah.
So that's not really how the sport works as much as people kind of want it to work. But I'm excited for the challenge, man. I think that I differ a little bit in other fighters in that I don't want to be a world champion if I'm not the actual best in the world.
Right. You want to fight the toughest, regardless of where they're placed in the division. You know, and also there's the case of fighters turning down Umar apparently, so it kind of adds into the matchmaking as well, right?
Yeah, that too. I think that there's like this hovering. I mean, we almost saw it like with all the Brazilians, like a few years ago, like when Aldo was taking over, and then there was like a Anderson Silva was like one of the greatest. You kind of see like these different parts of the world show that they have really good fighters. They come in, they do really well for a while, and then they still do well, definitely, but they don't have as much like upbeatness as much popularity as they kind of did when they initially came in, and that's almost how I see this part of the world where I think that they're phenomenal fighters. I've known it for a really long time. I did a world kickboxing tournament a long time ago in 2014 where I went and watched people from that part of the world fight, and I was like, oh wow, those guys are really, really good at combat sports.
Yeah.
And so I known for a really long time that part of the world was really good, and it was only going to be a matter of time before they were in the UFC and representing their countries the way that they are now. So yeah, I think that they're real good, and I think that I'm just excited for the challenge. I forget where I was going with that
No,
rant,
no,
but
no worries, no worries. And just last thing on that video, I know you had mentioned that some fans were saying like, "Oh, you're going to get destroyed" and all that. What has been the fan response from the Umar side? Like, has it been a lot, or has it been sort of normal compared to most fights? Like, just curious the response you've got, because you mentioned the people saying about the rankings, but I'm sure there's also people saying like, "Oh, you got no chance."
oh, I don't know. I think that so. First of all, yeah, a little bit. Like when I read comments, like I'll scroll through and really only read like the nice ones, and the second I get to a mean one, I'm like, I don't want
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that dumb stuff in my head. So then I stop reading them usually. So, but I do recall, like reading a few that were like, oh, you're gonna get out wrestled, blah blah blah. But at the same time, I mean, I don't think that anyone can really name a time outside of the Sterling fight where I was on my back for longer than 10 seconds, 15 seconds. So I just don't really think people are.
Well, they also make it out like Umar is like Habib in Islam, and he's not really. If you watch his fights, like he's got good wrestling, but that's not really his main thing, either. So it's like it's almost like they're confusing him with them.
Yeah, definitely. I also think that like what the Dagestani fighters have done better than anyone else isn't take people down. It's their ability to hold people down that's made them different than the like American wrestlers or the wrestlers that have been in the UFC before. I think that the Dagestanis just kind of figured out how to hold people down a lot better, which makes them look like a lot better wrestlers, which in MMA does make them a lot better wrestlers. So, I think that you just have to like know what's going on in fighting, and I definitely know that I'm a pretty knowledgeable martial artist at this point, and I think that I'm a very good fighter, and I think that I'm a very good thinker, and I think that I'm definitely coming up with some really good ways to combat everything that I think Umar is going to be able to throw at me.
And on that note, stylistically, how do you look at this fight?
Like I said, I think Umar is about as good of a grappler as all the other top guys, and then he has really good strikings. I actually see a lot of parallels in the way that Umar thinks and the way that I think about striking and just about MMA in general. He does a lot of point fighting from the outside, and then when you get close, he tries to take you down. I do, like more or less like a very similar thing where I'm just going to poke you from the outside. And if you don't do anything about it, I'm going to win. And if you do something about it, then I have like a knee waiting for you or like a wrestling shot waiting for you. And yeah, so I see a lot of parallels. So I've kind of a lot of, it's nice to know how he thinks. Like I can reverse engineer the way that he's thinking just because I know that I think a lot like the guy. So yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun trying to figure it out. It's been a lot of trying to figure it out, which is good. I have really good training partners to help me with that. We have a kid from Venezuela who was about to be on the Olympic team, and then something weird happened in Taekwondo. Training with Tan Lee. Sergio Pettis offered to come out, so I'm definitely going to take him up on that offer. So I have a lot of really good training partners that can give me that really like kicky Taekwondo karate look with like good wrestling also. So yeah, it's been fun trying to figure it out. I feel like I've gotten a lot better just in these 6 weeks trying to figure it out, and I'm excited to continue to figure it out and then show up on fight day and get another win.
Any plans to bring in any Russians or Dagestanis just to, maybe mimic the style a little bit or anything?
You kind of have to plug and play where you are in my career. Like, you don't get to have everyone have all of the attributes that the guys have, but we have two really, really good wrestlers on the team that, one of them, Taiwan Claxton, I think has a very similar wrestling style to Umar. I won't get into like what he does really well.
Yeah, for sure. No secrets. Yeah.
But Taiwan Claxton has really good wrestling that's a lot like Umar. I have a really good wrestling coach, Carrington Banks, who still wrestles with me a lot and kicks my ass in that too. So I feel pretty equipped for everything. I feel equipped in the training partners that I have and the training that I'm getting and the looks that I'm getting. I come from a good team. I have a lot of connections now where I have a lot of good training partners that I can just fly in and yeah, it's been like really fun and challenging trying to figure it all out.
Kamaru Usman and Justin Gaethje both have obviously ties to Umar through his management. Has there been any hesitation with them helping you for this fight, or is that not even a thing?
No, I don't think so. It's kind of weird, all the cliques that kind of form up when they have the same management group and stuff. That's always like an interesting part to me. But no, I mean, no, that hasn't crossed my mind of whether Gaethje is gonna, go say something or Kamaru's, like
Yeah, I don't even mean say something, but maybe just not help you because they're like, oh, I'm friends with him or something. I don't know.
No, not really.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. And then you mentioned like people coming in. Are you going to do any cross training, or is it going to be everyone coming to you type thing?
As long as if people are going to offer to come here, then I'm always going to have them come here. I'm a pretty routine guy, so I like being in my routine here in Colorado. If I have to make a trip out to wherever I got to make a trip out, I always will. But I always try to get guys here, and then when it's their time and they need me, then I'll definitely pay it forward and pay them back. But no, as often as I can, I'll get them back out here.
You think Ryan Hall will be part of this camp?
Yeah, Ryan's coming next week, actually.
Oh, awesome.
Yep. And then he'll probably come out one more time before. So, yeah, Ryan's super helpful. Ryan, again, has a very wise and knowledgeable approach to fighting, the wrestler style and that archetype. So yeah, me and Ryan got some good stuff going. So it's good.
He hasn't been 5 rounds before in the UFC. You have a number of times. This is a 5-round fight. Does that change the approach at all in the fight, or is it just you treat it like any other opponent?
Not too much. I think he has a good gas tank. A lot of the things, like when he does go, he'll explode into them. But no, I don't think it'll matter too much. Every fight that I've seen, he's looked in really good shape. Even like his older ones where he was doing all 3 rounds, he always looked in real good shape. So yeah.
Okay. And your corner, I know it's still early. Have you figured that out yet, or will it be the same corner?
Same corner, Christian Allen, Carrington Banks, Ryan Hall, same guys.
Excellent. And your prediction, your early prediction for this fight, how do you envision the fight playing out on August 5th?
I don't know. I don't really like doing too many
You could
predictions.
go vague though. You could say, finish or decision. I don't know. Like, do you kind of have an idea of?
Yeah, I don't know, man. This is one where kind of I feel like because there's so many question marks around Umar and he hasn't fought the highest level of skill. I think it's really hard to tell. Like even when I'm watching tape on him, I have to take with a grain of salt that the guys that he's fighting aren't the guys that I've been fighting for the last like few years. So I definitely think that he's good, but I think that there's going to be a lot of things that I'm going to learn about him in the fight, and it's going to be hard for me to say.
I love the honesty, man. This is why I love interviewing you. What you see is what you get. Do you factor in level of competition a lot when it comes to fights? Because some people, obviously feel like, well, you got to fight who you're given. And, in the case of like a Raoni Barcelos, for example, like he destroyed him, but like you said, he's not fighting Petr Yan like you are. Like, how much do you weigh the experience in a fight like this?
Mildly, like I feel like every advantage that you have or that you have against an opponent in MMA usually isn't a giant advantage. It's maybe just like an inch, but you really spread that inch out if you know how to do it. And I think that experience is a big deal. I think facing adversity is a big deal. And I know that I faced my fair share of adversity, and I have my fair share of experience in these big fights. This will be, either my fourth or fifth main event. This will be, like my fourth or fifth 5-rounder. So I know that I have a lot of experience. So there's a lot less unknown going into this thing for me than there likely is for him. So that's going to be a challenge for him. And I think that when we're in there, my experience is going to shine.
We got the big title fight. Obviously, I mentioned it there, UFC 292. Aljamain Sterling, Sean O'Malley. You're paying attention to that fight. Who gets it done?
I think Sterling's going to win that one.
Do you think it'll be dominant, or do you think Sean will give him a pretty good fight there as well? And it's not discrediting O'Malley. You just kind of look at his last fight where some people felt like it maybe could have gone the other way.
I don't know. A lot of Sterling's fights are pretty close. So I think Sterling's really good at staying like this much ahead. And I think that that's what he tries to do. And it's a smart way of fighting. And I think that, so yes, I do think it's going to be a fairly close one, but I think Sterling's like really good at keeping track of winning.
Have you been told if you win this fight, you'll get a title shot? I would think you would, because again, it's a very dangerous opponent in the division who's undefeated.
I believe so.
Okay. No, understandable for sure. Like, and second part to that question, are you worried if Henry Cejudo defeats Chito Vera that he might get it just because he's a former champion and the last fight he had with Sterling was extremely close?
No, definitely not. I think that him fighting Chito and then me winning will work in my favor even more than, so I'm kind of glad he's not fighting Marab, because then now I don't have any argument if he beats Chito.
Do you believe Aljamain Sterling when he says this is his last fight at 135?
Yeah, kind of. I just don't really know what his 145 expectations are. I don't know. I don't think that the UFC is just going to give him a title shot right off the bat. Maybe they will, but I don't really feel like they are going to. So, yeah, I think it depends on his expectation of the whole thing.
Would you be disappointed if you never got that rematch with Aljamain Sterling, or that doesn't matter to you?
I would like it. Yeah, I would like it for sure. Am I like losing sleep over it? Like, do I think about Aljamain a lot? No, but I would like that fight again. Yes.
Okay. And let's say, again, not looking too far ahead here, you beat Umar, Henry beats Chito, which I think, that's how some are sort of leaning here. If you were to fight Cejudo for a vacant title, how do you look at that fight stylistically?
Me and Cejudo?
Yeah, you and Cejudo, yeah.
I'd keep him on the outside. I would defend his shots, and I would land something big when he tries to get too close.
I know you're buddies with Beneil Dariush, obviously tough outing against Charles Oliveira. What did you think of Charles' win earlier this month against Beneil Dariush?
I took that night off from fighting, but I was really surprised that Oliveira did that. Like, he won so dominantly. Sad day for Beneil. I'm a Beneil fan, but yeah, Charles is really, really good, and seems like he's still getting better.
Do you think that performance gives, the idea that maybe he could beat Islam in a rematch, or do you think the skill for skill, it's still a bad style matchup for Charles?
I think Charles can do a lot better than what he did in the first one for sure. But I think Islam's definitely good. I think that Charles just has to approach him a lot differently than his like walk people down style because that doesn't really work when someone's a better wrestler than you are.
And is this part of a new contract, this fight, or are you still on your old contract?
We're working out a new contract.
Oh, excellent. Well, that's good news. And a couple of rapid fire questions. Again, we don't just talk fighting here, Cory. We got to talk about everything else. What is one book that has helped your fight career? You read a lot.
33 Strategies of War is one that I would recommend to a lot of like fighters. Yeah, that's a good one.
Okay, I'll have to see if they have that one on Amazon. Any hikes, or are you off hiking for camp?
Yeah, I don't really do anything except for training. Some days we'll play Spikeball. So if it stops raining here in Colorado, it's been raining a lot.
Oh, really?
But yeah, we'll probably pick a weekend and go play Spikeball every once in a while.
Who's the best Spikeball player, and who else plays on the team?
Uh, I am the best Spikeball player.
Okay.
Wetzel plays. Justin Wetzel plays.
Awesome.
Barrington Banks plays. Curtis will come out sometimes. Gaethje will come out sometimes. Gaethje's pretty good. Curtis is a good partner. Not much of a scorer, but he's a good partner. And then I'd say all around, I'm probably the best.
And last question. You're getting married soon, right? How does this fight affect all that?
It doesn't.
No? It's September, right? Or when are you having the wedding?
Yeah, it's September 1st, so it could make for a really awesome month for me.
For sure. What did your fiance say when you told her you'd be fighting in August? Because that's kind of cutting it close, right?
Yeah, I mean, she's cool with it. She understands how much time and energy this whole fighting thing takes up. So she's pretty attuned to it, and she understands. I think she's pretty glad that it's not closer to September 1st. That way my face won't be all busted up and stuff, or I'll be limping or whatever. So yeah, she's cool with it.
Are you guys doing like an engagement shoot as well? Because I would imagine that would be before the fight.
I don't know what an engagement shoot is.
Okay, no worries. No, I got married. That's obviously we had to do that before the wedding. I think people do that. So it's yeah. Anyways, I don't want to turn this into like a TLC show or anything. But Cory, thank you so much for doing this, man. Really looking forward to this one. UFC Nashville, August 5th. If there's anything you want to mention before we get out of here, sponsors, social media, whatever, I'll give you the last word.
Yep, right on. Oh, I'm coming out with some instructionals soon. I've been shooting them for like the last, I don't know, like 4 months or something. And those should be edited and all done. So just keep an eye out for the instructionals. I think that they're really good. So, yeah, that's about it.